My name is Chad Tyler. I'm the product manager for the G Suite Security Center. And then my colleague Ashai will join us in a little bit. He is the engineering manager for the G Suite Security Center on Google Cloud as well. So today's session, we're going to talk to you about some of the tools that are offered in G Suite to help you prevent, detect, and remediate security issues in your organization. A lot of what we talk about today will be focused on the G Suite Security Center itself, but we're also going to include other products that we think are relevant to the prevent, detect, and remediate story. We won't be covering all of the products that are available for security because we'd run out of time if we did that, so we just picked some of the ones that we think fit better into this framework as we talk through this. So it's becoming increasingly difficult for IT organizations to manage and protect their users, devices, and information. The average organization now has nearly 1,500 web services and cloud services that they're trying to manage, which means they have to be much more efficient at having the visibility and the ability to manage those applications. In addition, a lot of our focus goes toward keeping external bad actors from getting to our data or from compromising our users or compromising our devices. But nearly 30% of data breaches are caused by internal employees. And that can be employees that are actually trying to be malicious and steal information or share things in a way that they shouldn't be. Or it, a lot of times, is actually just employees that are making mistakes or don't understand why they shouldn't be doing certain things or are setting things in the wrong way. And so it becomes really important for us to set up guardrails to help them make good choices and help them to keep their data safe. So over the last several years, we've had the opportunity to talk to a lot of organizations and a lot of our partners to better understand the security issues that they're facing and some of the things that they're seeing. And what we found is that there's a lot of tools out there that provide a lot of data. They let you integrate with everything, but many times they fail to provide really valuable and actionable insights. We've talked to a lot of organizations that are just kind of overwhelmed with what they're getting and trying to use these tools. And they're either partially in the middle of implementing one of these tools, or they've managed to actually get it complete or worked with a partner to help them set this up, and now they don't know how to get the insights that they need to make the right decisions. In addition, the tools that do provide insights many times lack the controls that they need to remediate the things that are found. And so they're aware of these issues, but then they have a hard time resolving them, or they have to spend a long time trying to remediate the threats that they find. And lastly, those that do manage to provide insights and do manage to provide controls many times are very, very complex, and they require expertise that's very hard to find, or a lot of training that many times admins that are usually overwhelmed just don't have time to do. So as we were thinking about Security Center and as we were thinking about security, we kind of went to this question: how do we provide a solution that is comprehensive, yet at the same time simple enough that you can adopt it and use it? And so you'll see kind of that theme as we talk through the session today. We've tried to think of ways to make this comprehensive and at the same time make it simple enough that you can just jump in and start using it. So we think of security from three different lenses. The first is prevention. How do we help you to prevent issues before they happen and make choices that increase your security health? The second is how do we help you detect issues quickly so they don't linger and cause more damage? And the third is how do we help you remediate these issues once they're detected and once you know about them? And so those three categories roughly correlate with the three different components that we have in the Security Center right now. Security health is meant to help you prevent security issues by better educating you on the settings and tools that are available to you as a G Suite or Cloud Identity customer. The security dashboards help you detect issues by giving you a high-level overview of important security metrics so you can better understand where things are and what's happening. And the third is the investigation tool, which we announced yesterday in the keynote, which we just moved into the early adopter program. And this is meant to help you quickly diagnose, triage, and resolve these threats. So we'll go into a little bit more depth on each of those and talk about as well other tools in each of these categories. And then we'll jump into a demo and spend some time walking through the product because it helps to actually see it in action so you can kind of cement how these different things work. So the first category, again, that we're going to cover is prevention, helping you prevent issues before they become an issue. So security health, as I just mentioned, is the main offering from the Security Center that helps you prevent these security issues. And we do this by bringing all the different security settings and tools from across G Suite and Cloud Identity into one tool, into one experience where you can see them all. And then we provide best practice recommendations for each of them. And the idea is to help you better understand how each of these things impact your organization and how you can take steps to improve where you're at. The security health component was developed based on training that our professional services organization did with a lot of our customers and partners. And they would go out and they would work with our customers on how they could improve their security health and how they could get better at protecting their information, their users and devices. And over the course of several years, they developed this curriculum, and we wanted to actually productize this and make it available to everyone that has access to the Security Center so they could use these learnings and apply them to their organizations. Now, one of the things I want to call out with Security Health is we don't have like an overall score for you. And the reason we didn't go with an overall score is we wanted to allow you to focus on those individual recommendations and not get caught up in just trying to improve that score. We realize that not every organization is going to be able to implement every one of these recommendations. And so we wanted to allow you to really focus on the granular things, the individual steps you could take to improve where you're at. Security Health, as I mentioned, covers most of G Suite and Cloud Identity. A few of the things that we cover are Gmail, Drive, mobile management, user accounts, Hangouts, and sites and groups. There's many others. And what you'll see is as we launch new security features and new tools, we'll actually add recommendations into Security Health so that you can learn about them and recognize them and take steps to implement them. So we recommend that you come back to this feature and better understand what's available to you as an organization. The second thing I want to cover in prevention, and you've probably heard about security keys a bunch of times if you've been attending security sessions, but the number one way that your information is compromised is through phishing. A lot of you probably already know that, but second factor authentication is shown to be effective in reducing that. But what we've seen is that security keys are amazing at stopping phishing. We don't know of an instance where a user was compromised when they were using security keys, and we recommend that all of our organizations implement them and use them. We, in the admin console, we actually have some great ways to manage these security keys and to deploy them in flexible ways so that you can work around how your organization needs to use them or how they need to roll them out. If you're not able to use these for all users, which we do recommend that you use them for all users, but if you can't, we at least recommend that you roll these out for admins, for privileged users, or high-profile users to better protect those users that you really don't want to get compromised. And then the third and final area that I want to cover in prevention is Gmail phishing and malware protection. So you may have seen this slide in other security sessions, but Gmail is an area where we're constantly investing and constantly innovating to make sure that you have the most up-to-date protections available. And it starts before an email is even sent with authentication, setting up your organization in a way that these emails can be authenticated and your domain can be authenticated. Before an email is delivered, it is scanned for viruses. We sanitize emails that are identified as malicious or suspicious. And we do deep scanning to better identify any attachments or issues with the email if that's a feature that you have enabled. When a message is opened, we again scan for viruses. We prevent downloads on attachments that are deemed to be malicious. And we give warning banners around spoofing, around out of domain, and S-MIME verification. So I don't want to go through each of these steps because there's a lot. But as you can see, as a user goes through and interacts with an email, we've thought of ways to try to protect your users and your information in each of those steps. So this is an area where you're continuing to see announcements from us. We're continuing to invest here. It's an area we're really dedicated to. The next category that I want to talk through is detection. So how do we detect issues quickly? And so I mentioned earlier the security dashboards. This is an area where we give you an overview of important metrics, and we help you kind of get a pulse of what's going on in your organization. The idea is to quickly glance across and understand what's happening. And then from any of those overview dashboards, you can actually drill in and better understand and get much more granular with what data you're specifically looking at. And so the idea is to go from that overview where you're detecting issues and quickly drill down until you can get to something that's actionable and better understand what you need to do to resolve any threats that you've identified. The security dashboards cover quite a bit of G Suite, actually. Right now, they cover the types of files that your users are sharing, the emails that they're sending and receiving, the OAuth grants that they're giving to third-party applications, so you can better understand how your data might be at risk from that perspective. The logins that they're doing and what types of challenge methods they're using to log in, so you can understand how they're authenticating, and the mobile management devices that you actually have managed in your organization, so you can see any failed login attempts or anything that might look suspicious on those devices. The second thing I want to cover in detection is data loss prevention, and you could put this in prevention, you could put it in detection. So we can talk through each of those. But the idea with data loss prevention is to prevent data loss before it actually happens. So we're detecting it before it actually leaves your organization and stopping it. The data loss prevention is available for both Gmail and Drive. You can set it up using either predefined content detectors, so things that have been defined and are set rules that you can just implement straight from the data loss prevention console. And you can also create custom rules using regex, so you can define patterns that are more specific to your organization, that matter to you, that you don't want to leave the organization. In addition, there's some really nice advanced features such as like optical character recognition, so it doesn't just have to be text. We can actually recognize characters within images and stop those as well. And then the third and last thing I want to cover in detection is third-party apps whitelisting. So this is a tool to help you better manage what can be granted to third-party applications. So you're able to go in and blacklist specific scopes or specific data that you find to be too sensitive. And then you can whitelist specific applications that you want to have access to those scopes. So this allows you to have a lot more control over what your users can do natively versus what they have to ask permission for. This is available across all of the platforms, web, iOS, and Android. And there's the ability to manage both G Suite and GCP services. And then the last category is remediation. So how do we, when we detect these things, how do we quickly remediate the things that do get through? And so this is where the investigation tool comes in. This is in our early adopter program, available to our enterprise for education and cloud identity customers. At a high level, what it allows you to do is do really advanced queries across multiple data sources to better understand the breadth of the attack, understand what data was affected, pivot between different data sources to correlate data and understand how they relate to each other, and then do bulk actions to remediate issues to clean them up. And so with that, what we'll actually do is jump into the product. I'll talk a lot more about the investigation tool as we do the demo so that we can show you kind of what that looks like. One second here. Okay. So I'll go ahead and walk you through the 3 different components of the Security Center. We'll start with Security Health. And like I said, this is a tool to help you prevent issues before they happen. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because we talked about this quite a bit before. But from this tool, Security Health, you can actually get recommendations really easily on these different security tools and security settings to help educate you and help you better understand the impact of these different settings. From any of those, you can dig in deeper and you can read documentation around them to understand the impact of these different settings. So that's Security Health. The security dashboards are the next thing I want to talk about. And by the way, all of these are available from the admin console under the security section. You can see dashboards, Security Health, and investigation tool. Dashboards and Security Health should be available to anyone on Enterprise or Enterprise for Education. And the investigation tool is available through Early Adopter Program once you apply and are whitelisted. So again, the dashboards help you get a high-level overview of these different metrics. And so, for instance, if I am interested in phishing, what I can do here is drill in, and then I can get much more specific on what I want to see. Whether it's spam, phishing, malware, suspicious emails that have come through, I can classify whether they were identified as such before they were delivered or after they were delivered to my users, so I can better understand the risk that was associated with those emails. And then below, what I can do is I can slice the data in different ways. So if I want to understand the subjects, the most common subjects that are coming through in these specific emails, I can do that. Or I can filter over to recipients, and I can understand who in my organization is receiving the most emails of this category. So in this case, the insight might be, these are the users that are most at risk from these phishing emails. I need to make sure that they have multi-factor authentication or security keys, or I need to work with them to make sure that they understand what these look like so they don't put our information at risk. I'll come back to the dashboards in a second. I want to introduce the investigation tool first and walk you through a scenario in that, and then I'll show you a little bit of how we're starting to tie these different components together to make it really easy for you to move from one to the other and complete more complex tasks that you're trying to do. So the investigation tool, I'll walk you through a full scenario on this one. The idea here in this scenario is that a user was hijacked and they sent out a bunch of malicious emails to users in your organization. You need to figure out who it went to, understand the breadth of the attack, and then remediate it and figure that out. So we'll walk through that here. So in this case, we're going to go to Gmail log events. The sender was Chad Tyler. The subject of the email was confirm, or at least it contained confirm login. And we want to see events that were received by users in our organization. Thanks for catching that. We'll do subject. How about that? That might work better. Oh, cleared me out. All right, back on track. Okay, so we'll query for that. And so what we're going to do is try to understand which of our users actually received that. And so we get back results, and it looks like 5 of the users in our organization received that email. And so from here, we can do some things like dig in deeper and view the headers. We can see, what the more detailed information around those emails look like. But we can also select those emails, and we can go down and we can erase them from the user's inbox so they don't accidentally click on them. And I'll go ahead and show you what that looks like. So we'll click there, and we make you be pretty explicit about what you're trying to do, and type in the actual number of emails that you're deleting, and then we click erase. And so what we've done is we've come in, we've entered a few easy parameters around what we want to do, and you can get pretty complex with how you want to find those emails. We've looked at who received them, selected them straight from this UI, and then we've kicked off a task. And you can see we just got back the result. All 5 of those emails were deleted. We give you back a lot of really detailed information per email on what was the result of that action, so you can understand and make sure that that threat's remediated. Additionally, one of the things that's kind of a cool feature, you can actually act on as many emails or documents as you want at once. So we've tested this up to the millions. Hopefully you don't have issues that big, but we can handle it if you do. So you can scale this to as big as you need to. And some of the things that we've done is we've integrated this into the long-running task pane here at the top of the admin console. So you can actually watch the status of your actions after you kick them off. So if you do something that's really big that's going to take a little while to finish, you can actually watch the countdown to when it's finished and how many there are that it's going to affect. You can also drill into the details. So when it's completed, if you had to leave this tool, you can easily click on View Results, and it'll bring you back, and you can see the more detailed results of what happened. And then, continue on if there are any errors that you need to address. In addition, you can also understand what other admins are doing within this tool. So for instance, if you're working and trying to collaborate with other admins or analysts on your team, you can come in, you can better understand what they've done, what tasks they've taken. So it actually looks like somebody else is working on the same domain right now. I didn't know that, so now I do. So hopefully I don't collide with what they're doing. So we've tried to really make this easy to understand and easy to follow. We've built in scalability. Ishai is going to talk a little bit more about some of those features and how we've thought about that. One other thing I want to show you, actually a few more things I want to show you. One of the concepts that's really important and that's really powerful in the investigation tool is the idea of pivoting. And so what you can do is you can actually select a column, and you can take as input all of the values in this column and bring it to another search so you can kind of correlate the data and better understand, for instance, in this case, what have these recipients that received this phishing email been doing in Drive? Maybe we want to understand if they've maybe been compromised. What have they been doing in Drive? And so what we're going to do is we're going to come down and say, I want to specifically see what these users have been doing in the Drive logs and where they were actors. So we're going to click on that, and it dedupes and brings us the 5 unique values. And then we're going to say specifically, I want to see if any of these users have changed a file that was internal and shared it externally. And so we'll query on that. And again, so what we're doing is we're taking these users that received the phishing email, and we're trying to understand what they've been doing in Drive. We get back 4 results. And we can further classify this if we want and put a specific date, so when that email was received, what happened after that. In this case, we'll just look at these. So we see that there has been some sharing on files called Do Not Share in future project designs. Those seem pretty sensitive. So again, we get very contextual actions. In this case, we're working with Drive files. So we can do things like change owner, remove specific users that have access, disable download, print, and copy so that these aren't pulled from our Drive folder and shared or copied or downloaded. And we can also dig a little bit deeper into the file permissions. So if we want to understand, for instance, what is the current state of those files, we can drill in here. And we can look at these files from several different lenses. The first is the files that were involved in our query and who has access to them. The second is looking at it from the people and what files they have access to. And the third is understanding the link sharing on those files. So are they shared publicly? Are they shared in a way that we don't consider appropriate based on the links that have been generated? And then right from here, I can say, A. Duncan should not have access to this. We can remove her. We can even come in and kind of act in bulk on all the users that are involved in that query. Same thing with the links. We can easily come in and say, this should be restricted. It shouldn't be shared publicly on the web. So you can correlate and act on the specific data that you're looking at. We could continue with this example. We could look at the user accounts. Do they have 2SV? Do they have security keys? When's the last time they logged in? What does that look like? We could look at their devices. Is there any suspicious activity going on with those devices? And kind of better track down, diagnose, and resolve these issues. A few final thoughts on the investigation tool. One of the things that we heard over and over again with the partners and customers that we worked with as we developed this is that privileges would be really important to this, and being able to be very specific on what users should be able to access when they're using the investigation tool. So one of the things that you'll see is we've thought through privileges and tried to make them very granular so you can adjust them to your specific needs. So in this case, you can come in, you can go by data source, and you can do read or write and give admins the specific privilege that they need. So if you have a lower tier of analysts that you want to be able to diagnose things but maybe not delete a bunch of emails, you could do that. If you want to get full access, you can also do that and kind of mix and match based on the needs of your organization. Auditing was also something that was called out pretty frequently. So every query, every drill down, every action, every export that an admin does in the investigation tool and in the security center in general is audited so that you can see them, so you can basically watch the watchers. And then finally, one thing I want to say, I called out that I would come back to the dashboards. One of the things that we're working on is we're tying these various components together. And so you'll see this more and more, but this is a specific example that we're starting with that we heard would be very useful. And when we first released these dashboards, if any of you have had access to them and been able to use them, one of the things we got feedback around is that they're great. They let us dig down to find issues, but the thing that was missing is we're not sure what to do with those issues, or how do we go and remediate those? How do we take care of those issues? And so what we wanted to do is really continue that task and make it really easy for you. And so you'll see that we're starting to tie the dashboards to the investigation tool. So for instance, if you're looking at the dashboards, and in this case you're looking at how users are sharing files, what you can do is as you drill down and see something that looks interesting, for instance, if we think this looks like an issue, what we can do is click here on New Investigation. And what that does is it generates the correct query in the investigation tool to show us that exact same data, and it kicks off the query to find it for us. And so we see here we are looking at 8 different results. We kicked off the query in the investigation tool. We see the same thing. And then we can go and select those, and we can do those same actions that we kind of just walked through. You can also pivot from these to other things. And so again, the idea is to just really remove the friction that might have existed before and start to work through that and make it really easy for you. And so that is the Security Center, the investigation tool that we just released. It's something we're really excited about. We've been lucky enough to work with some customers that have given a lot of feedback and worked with us over the last several months. We've refined based on their feedback, and we're excited to work with more of you. And so with that, I'm going to pass to Ishai, who's going to come and talk a little bit more to you.
Thanks. Hi, everybody. Last few minutes of the day. Appreciate your attention. Let's go. How do we go to the deck? Great. Awesome. So thanks a lot, Chad, for the demo and the overview. I'm going to go back to the same point that Chad started with, or a few slides down his deck, his talk, can we design a security experience that is comprehensive yet simple? So we're talking a lot with our customers, and we're trying to focus on both comprehensiveness, building tools that by themselves can do something that it can really fix full journeys of users, but yet simple. So how to simplify the work. So simplification is usually when looking at a product and having it doing one thing and doing it very, very well. And comprehensive, we're achieving by linking different products together, carrying context. So you can achieve one long journey that could be a bit complicated and not throwing you to a command line here or opening some other completely different tool there and trying to stitch it yourself manually. So as I said, we're building specific products, drilling down in those products into something that you can completely encompass, and trying to find with our customers, when we're talking with them on a weekly basis, ways to link those products together so you can really complete a journey. One example that I can drill down on is the link between the security dashboard that Chad has shown you and the investigation tool. The dashboard allows you to view different data, basically events from all around G Suite, find anomalies, interesting things in the data, or any arbitrary thing that you think should be investigated by slicing the data you see on the chart and focusing on specific dates or times on the chart. And once you do identify that, we encapsulate the context of that specific point of interest and push it to the investigation tool, create a full query, pre-populated, let you maybe tweak it if you like, and then from there on, continue your journey and finish either a further investigation on different dimension. If you started with email, you can go to Drive, devices, OAuth, and other areas. Identify the places that could be problematic, and then act on them in the tool. So with one tool, you can cover very different verticals, like from accounts, devices, OAuth, and so forth. You don't need to jump between different tools, and do it in the same simple ways, get the result in the same manner, export them, and reason about them in the same way. So with that, we achieve both the simplicity of acting on things, but then the comprehensiveness of identifying issues and eventually getting things done in a timely manner. So the focus of our product, of our communication with our customers, and something that you'll see us working on as we develop the products we have, is building those bridges between different components that we have and reducing the friction of work that you need to do in your daily work. So eventually, the daily security actions that you're doing should be reduced to minimum. The time to execute them should be reduced as much as possible. The second point I would like to touch on is the fault tolerance. This is another point that we're talking about with our customers. Customers may deal with unbounded a lot of data, and they need to resolve those in a timely manner, in a way that is both easy and reliable. So we figure that in order to deal with large follow-on actions, we need to take a lot of the Google knowledge that we acquired over the years. We're taking that, the infrastructure Google has built, and applying into those tools that you're about to use. And by doing that, we enable very simple actions on really unbounded amount of data. Chad in his demo showed you pretty simple examples that we can cover in a demo of 5 or a dozen different items. But like he said, we could deal with potentially millions of different objects. But in order to do that, you need to be very meticulous. Hardware failures could happen, of course, and other things along the line. So we're keeping track of everything that happens, making sure that we carry on from the point that we failed, if there was a hardware failure, and continuously letting you know of what's going on. So to achieve that, as you saw in the demo, we are integrating with the long-running operations task pane. Over there, you could see pending operations, so things that may have not started yet because we're starting to collect information in order to compute what we need to do. For example, it could be also huge exports or, of course, wiping out a lot of offline or online mobile devices, and that could take time just because of the nature of this vertical and so forth. While things are progressing, we tell you exactly where you are. If you need to do an action on millions of entities, whether it's documents, accounts, emails, and so forth, you'll see where you are in the progress, and you can reason about what's going on and what's your point in the resolution process. And eventually, of course, knowing something is done, even after you close your laptop, you open it again, you can click on the pane there, see that you're done, and click on the view result there in order to get to that pane, which basically lists all the things that happen. Because your basic query, your basic request for action could be on just a query, and you don't really anticipate which are the items that could be affected by that. So here we tell you exactly what happened. If there was any failure, for example, you wanted to delete thousands of documents, but few of them were already deleted by the user manually before you click the button, you could see it there. You can, of course, export it later. You can reason about it and get your login and your personal auditing. Now, finally, I would like to encourage you to check out the website, this link. If you already have either enterprise for education, or Drive and the cloud identity packages, you can start using the security health and the security dashboards. You can also sign up for the EAP program of the investigation tool. Start playing with it. Give us feedback, of course. And if you don't have those, of course, you can log in and get more information about everything we talked about here.